Misachika is what you'd call the classic underdog, an awkward, unattractive otaku who spends more time immersed in anime than interacting with people. His existence flies under the radar until the unthinkable happens. The most popular girl in school, Alia, inexplicably falls for him. Alia isn't just any popular girl, though. She's the queen bee, the girl who turns heads wherever she goes, with students practically worshipping the ground she walks on. She's so dazzling that even a single glance from her can make someone's day or crush them entirely. One morning, the most coveted boy in school, a Timothée Chalamet lookalike who believes his $2 haircut is enough to woo any girl, musters the confidence to approach Alia. He's certain his charm will win her over, but Alia instantly shuts him down, rejecting him in front of everyone. The poor guy, desperate to save face, tries to pivot, asking for her number in a last-ditch effort. But Alia isn't having it. She hits him where it hurts, bluntly telling him she's not even remotely interested. His ego crumbles as the rest of the school watches in stunned silence, realizing that if this king of popularity couldn't land a date with her, they surely stand no chance either. Later that day, Alia waltzes into class and finds Misachika, the unassuming otaku, catching up on some sleep at his desk. Irritated, she wakes him up with a kick and scolds him, asking if he stayed up all night watching anime again. Misachika admits to it without shame, explaining that it was for something important. Alia rolls her eyes, thinking he was probably involved in some Twitter drama or stuck in an endless online argument. But when she discovers that he actually stayed up just to binge-watch anime recaps, she calls him insane. Misachika laughs it off, saying that for the sake of anime culture, he'd proudly wear a straitjacket. Their banter doesn't stop there. As Misachika lets out a huge yawn, wide enough to fit an eggplant, Alia mockingly comments in Russian that he looks pathetic. Confused but curious, Misachika asks what she said. With a smirk, Alia dismissively tells him that it doesn't matter. First period is chemistry, a class that coincidentally mirrors the bubbling tension between them. Misachika, naturally, forgets his textbook and ends up sharing Alia's. As the teacher drones on about the lesson, Misachika battles his exhaustion, struggling to stay awake. Annoyed, Alia pokes him with her pen, causing him to jolt and raise his hand. The teacher calls on him to answer a question, and in a panic, Misachika turns to Alia for help. She points at something, so Misachika confidently repeats it. Unfortunately, it's completely wrong. The teacher sighs and asks Alia for the correct answer, which she gives effortlessly, making Misachika feel betrayed. When he accuses her of throwing him under the bus, Alia just grins mischievously, insisting she was only pointing at the question number. But what Alia doesn't know is that Misachika has a secret. He's been able to understand her Russian all along. Ever since his childhood, when he used to play with a Russian girl, he had picked up enough of the language to follow along with Alia's sarcastic quips. All this time, Alia had been calling him cute in Russian, and it completely messes with his head. He's left questioning her every move, trying to figure out if she's teasing him or genuinely interested. However, he chooses to keep his knowledge of Russian a secret, knowing that if Alia found out, she'd probably die of embarrassment, and Misachika isn't ready to deal with that level of drama. Later in the day, Alia catches Misachika using his phone during class, which is strictly forbidden unless there's an emergency. She snatches it out of his hand, curious to see what's so important. When she sees a picture of an anime girl with silver hair, she rolls her eyes and hands the phone back, muttering in Russian that her own hair is silver too. Misachika catches the comment, but when he asks her about it, she simply brushes it off and calls him a game junkie. Misachika, of course, spirals into an unnecessary tangent about how he's not a real junkie because he doesn't even have a Twitch stream yet. Alia can't help but feel that there's no hope for him. During lunch, Misachika and his friends sit together, watching as the student council enters the cafeteria. Alia, who serves as the treasurer, walks in alongside her sister Maria and their spokesperson Yuki. The boys can't stop ogling the Kujo sisters, acknowledging that they're way out of everyone's league. Misachika remains uninterested until Yuki, noticing his lack of reaction, suggests they sit with him and his friends. The boys, despite being intimidated, agree. As the group settles in, Yuki and Misachika share a light-hearted conversation about their shared distaste for cafeteria food. Meanwhile, Alia watches them with a look of disdain, though she remains quiet for most of the meal. Yuki later asks Misachika if he's thought about joining the student council, but Misachika laughs and says he'd rather watch that terrible 2010 Airbender movie that no one likes to talk about. Yuki points out that Misachika was her vice president back in middle school and had been very capable, but Alia, switching to Russian, mutters that Yuki doesn't need to tell her how competent Misachika is. Later, Yuki says her goodbyes and Alia says she's surprised any girl would. One be friends with them. Misachika points out that she's his friend, which surprises Alya, who agrees, and suddenly walks away, leaving Misachika confused. As the day progresses, Masachika's mind drifts back to his childhood memories of the blonde Russian girl who had inspired him to learn the language. He remembers how dedicated he was back then, studying Russian just to be able to communicate with her. Yet, frustratingly, he can't remember her name. The next day, Masachika arrives at school early and surprises everyone by tidying up the classroom. Alia is the first to arrive and is shocked to find Masachika actually awake and functional before class starts. She comments sarcastically that hell must have frozen over. Masachika, noticing some dirt on her socks, asks if she stepped in a puddle, but Alia explains that she had been splashed with mud by a passing truck on her way to school. Trying to brush off her embarrassment, Alia awkwardly asks if Masachika has reconsidered joining the student council. Once again, he flatly refuses, joking that he'd rather swallow nails. Alia changes the subject, but her nerves get the best of her, and she ends up flustered. She begins removing her dirty socks, and Masachika, flustered himself, can't help but stare. Noticing his reaction, Alia playfully suggests he fetch her a spare pair of socks from her locker. Masachika reluctantly agrees, but when she teases him to put the socks on for her, he panics and hesitates. Alia, however, insists, telling him it would be a reward for helping her out. As Masachika nervously complies, he accidentally brushes against a sensitive spot, and Alia reflexively kicks him in the face, sending him tumbling. Despite the pain, Masachika's inner otaku deems it worth the suffering. Later, when he tries to apologize, Alia brushes him off again, calling him a leg fetish scum in Russian. However, she also confesses that she isn't actually mad at him and even apologizes for kicking him. When she checks if he's okay, Masachika awkwardly dodges the question and thanks her for giving him a glimpse of heaven. This only embarrasses Alia further, leading to a playful chase around the school as she tries to escape her own flustered feelings. Eventually, they both cool down, and Masachika offers Alia her favorite drink as a peace offering. Touched that he remembered such a small detail, Alia switches to Russian and shyly asks if he wants a sip. Realizing this could be a chance for an indirect kiss, Masachika freezes up, overwhelmed by the prospect. Instead of seizing the moment, he chickens out and pretends not to understand. As usual, Alia laughs to herself, thinking he's still clueless about her Russian comments, completely unaware that Masachika has been following her every word all along. Several days later, Masachika finds himself in a storage room helping Yuki, the two of them goofing around as usual. Suddenly, Alia appears from behind a pile of boxes, her presence catching them both off guard. She playfully laments about always being the third wheel in these situations, making Masachika blush awkwardly. The girls quickly redirect him to help with their original task, sorting out the storage space. Masachika dutifully starts by bringing down a pile of board games, which gives Yuki the perfect opportunity to gloat about her last victory. Rolling her eyes, Alia chimes in, calling them a cringy couple before telling them to focus and get back to work. Then, in Russian, she mutters under her breath, wishing someone would pay attention to her too. Masachika shivers at the unexpected vulnerability in her voice, secretly understanding every word, but chooses not to react. Alia, oblivious to his comprehension, continues to think she's being sly. After cleaning up the storage room, the group heads to the student council office where the student council president, Kenzaki, introduces himself to Masachika. Kenzaki is impressive with the charisma and confidence of a leader, though Masachika internally compares him to an unfinished art project, wondering how someone so scatterbrained ended up in charge. As Masachika prepares to make a quick exit, Kenzaki insists on treating him to dinner as a gesture of gratitude for his help. Masachika, ever the introvert, tries to decline, but Yuki encourages him to accept, joking that his only plans for the evening involve meeting tumbleweeds at home. Kenzaki, perplexed by her strange metaphor, wonders aloud how Yuki knows what Masachika's home life is like, but she just smirks and says they go way back. Kenzaki extends the dinner invitation to the girls as well, and they both agree to join. At the restaurant, Kenzaki praises the group for finishing the storage room cleanup so efficiently. Yuki, as usual, takes the chance to hype up Masachika, crediting him with their success. Impressed, Kenzaki asks if Masachika would consider joining the student council, but Masachika declines with a laugh, saying he'd rather step on a Lego. Kenzaki, persistent, argues that being on the council would significantly boost Masachika's recommendations for university, but Masachika remains disinterested, more focused on recommending his favorite manga series to anyone who would listen. As the conversation flows, Yuki adds to the pressure, pestering Masachika about why he's being so stubborn. Masachika finally asks why Yuki is so intent on him joining when she's practically guaranteed to win the election. But Kenzaki drops a bombshell, revealing that Alia is planning to run for student council president as well. This revelation shocks Masachika, but Alia confirms her intention to run, her voice filled with determination. After dinner, Kenzaki slyly suggests that Masachika walk Alia home while he takes care of Yuki. The group splits up, and as Masachika walks alongside Alia, he notices that she's unusually quiet and distant. When they reach her stop, Alia simply waves goodbye and leaves without her usual playful banter or a single word in Russian, leaving Masachika confused and concerned. Back at home, Masachika senses something is off the moment he steps inside. Sure enough, Yuki is casually lounging on his couch, flipping through a manga. When he questions her presence, she ignores him, fully absorbed in a chapter featuring a couple from Alabama. Masachika calls her out on pretending to be childhood friends in front of everyone at school, but Yuki retorts that being siblings doesn't contradict the narrative she's created. With that out of the way, they focus on the manga she's reading, discussing its cultured content and exchanging lighthearted banter. The next morning, Masachika wakes up to find Yuki sprawled across him in bed. He groggily pushes her off, quipping that he's not interested in going full Targaryen with her. Later, the two head to the mall, where Yuki browses through clothes while Masachika feels a growing sense of dread as he checks the price tags. As they shop, Masachika mentions noticing a silver-haired figure lurking at the edge of his vision. Yuki, always a step ahead, tells him she noticed the peeping Tom long before. When they finally confront the mystery figure, it turns out to be none other than Alia. Trying to play it cool, Alia claims she just happened to run into them, but neither Masachika nor Yuki buy her excuse. Yuki invites Alia to lunch with them, but Masachika tries to dissuade her, knowing the restaurant serves notoriously spicy food. Alia, undeterred by his warnings, insists on joining them. Moments later, she finds herself staring at a dish that could easily be mistaken for a bowl of molten lava. Despite Masachika's concern, Alia stubbornly digs in, only to immediately regret it as the fiery spices assault her senses. In a mix of pride and desperation, Alia switches to Russian, tearfully begging for help but refusing Masachika's offers whenever he tries to assist her. Meanwhile, Yuki, ever the troublemaker, eggs Alia on, offering to make her meal even spicier. Masachika sees through Yuki's ploy but is powerless to stop the chaos. Alia, determined not to back down, pours the extra spice into her dish, resulting in her screaming out in pain. After they finally escape the restaurant, Masachika offers to buy Alia some ice cream to cool down. As they walk, Masachika, curious about her motivation, asks why she wants to run for student council president. Alia shrugs off the question at first, saying she doesn't need a reason to aim high. However, in a rare moment of vulnerability, she quietly admits that she doesn't have a running mate yet. Masachika asks if she's planning to run alone, and Alia jokes that she might just recruit a random stranger to meet the requirements. But in Russian, she confesses that she wishes Masachika would run alongside her. Her words stir an old memory in Masachika, reminding him of a time when he saw a girl cry after losing an election, leaving him with a pang of sympathy for Alia. As they finish up their day, Alia drags Masachika along to do some more shopping. He protests at first, but then realizes that Alia doesn't have many close friends because of her seemingly perfect but prickly demeanor. Feeling a bit sorry for her, Masachika agrees to accompany her. They browse through various stores, with Alia growing increasingly frustrated, suspecting that Masachika's kindness stems from pity. When she tries on a particularly stylish outfit, she hopes to impress him, but before she can show off, she has a sudden moment of panic, worried that he won't react at all. Finally, Alia steps out of the changing room, and Masachika, to her relief, compliments her outfit with unexpected sincerity. Flustered by his genuine praise, Alia retreats back into the stall, unsure how to handle the sudden surge of emotions. Determined to impress him further, she tries on outfit after outfit, each time seeking his approval. Eventually, she attempts a more daring look, hoping to tease him with a bit of skin, but when she opens the curtain, she's shocked to find Yuki standing there instead of Masachika. Embarrassed, Alia switches to Russian, wishing she could disappear. Masachika, overhearing her, translates the comment for Yuki, who teasingly calls Alia a big baby. On the train ride home, Alia silently stews over everything that happened, from the skimpy outfit she wore to her awkward interactions with Masachika. But as she watches him and Yuki exchange goodbyes, a more pressing thought invades her mind. Why did Masachika and Yuki get off at the same station? After a long day, Alia returns home where her sister, Maria, greets her with a warm smile. However, Maria quickly notices that Alia seems to be in an unusually melancholic mood, something out of character for her typically composed sister. Sensing an opportunity to get to the bottom of things, Maria gently probes her about what's going on. Alia tries to brush it off, but eventually lets it slip that it has something to do with Masachika, her peculiar classmate. Maria's eyes immediately light up with excitement, thrilled at the thought that perhaps, after all these years, a boy might have finally pierced through Alia's impenetrable emotional armor. Alia, however, scoffs at the idea and firmly insists that her relationship with Misachika is strictly platonic. They're just friends, nothing more. Maria arches an eyebrow, unconvinced. She can't help but wonder aloud how Alia, the queen of being selective with people, could even manage to be friends with someone like Misachika, a notorious slacker whom Alia usually would have no patience for. Alia hesitates but eventually begins recounting the story of how they met, taking Maria back 6 years to their time in Russia. It all started when Alia's class was split into groups for a project. The winners were promised an enticing prize, and Alia, being the perfectionist she was determined to excel. She went above and beyond, traveling into town to conduct interviews and compile her research. But when she returned to school, ready to contribute, she found her group completely indifferent to the project's success. Her classmates, future couch potatoes in the making, didn't share her drive and mocked her for working too hard. Alia's efforts were dismissed, and despite her attempts to rally the group, she found herself working solo, essentially writing a dissertation for an assignment that should have been a team effort. The prize went to another group, leaving Alia devastated and questioning why she ever expected others to match her level of ambition. From that moment, Alia resolved to harden her heart, vowing to be self-reliant. Fast forward to years later, she transferred to a prestigious Japanese school and encountered Misachika, who, to her dismay, appeared to be yet another slacker who couldn't be bothered with the simplest tasks. When the school festival approached, everyone was given responsibilities, and unsurprisingly, Alia shouldered her burden alone. Other students tried to convince her to relax. It was just a festival after all, but Alia's resolve was unwavering. She worked herself to the bone until Misachika suddenly intervened, urging her to go home and rest. To her astonishment, he had even arranged for the Handicrafts Club to assist in her absence, demonstrating that even a slacker like him could rally others to help if necessary. Misachika explained his methods to Alia, telling her that there was no point in handling everything alone. This, however, ticked Alia off, as she couldn't understand why he found it so wrong to take the festival seriously. She launched into one of her eye-rolling speeches about not compromising on quality, insisting that there was nothing wrong with working hard, especially since no one else seemed to care as much as she did. Misachika calmly reminded her that the whole point of festival attractions was to work together. Instead of doing everything herself, he suggested she use a bit of emotional blackmail to guilt-trip the others into working hard alongside her. But when he noticed she was gearing up for another lecture, he quickly apologized and expressed his appreciation for all her efforts. Reluctantly, Alia agreed to head home, but she couldn't help but wonder, what exactly was Misachika's deal? The next day, to her surprise, Misachika's plan worked, and the other students put in real effort. The festival ended up being a resounding success, and for the first time in a long while, Alia felt like she was part of something bigger than herself. She even sought out Misachika during the after-party, curious about his seemingly out-of-character behavior. They bantered about her dancing abilities, and for the first time, Alia found herself laughing at his jokes rather than getting frustrated. As the night went on, a group of Misachika's admirers attempted to corner Alia for a dance, but Misachika grabbed her hand and whisked her away, declaring that she was already taken. Alia's heart pounded as she was caught off guard by the gesture, and in that moment, something shifted. She was no longer just tolerating Misachika, she was beginning to genuinely enjoy his company. From then on, Alia's interactions with Misachika grew more frequent, and while she continued to needle him with her sharp tongue, deep down, her feelings were evolving. Returning to the present, Maria listens intently to the story, her eyes practically twinkling with the classic friends to lovers energy she recognizes from her own past experiences. Alia rolls her eyes, insisting that Misachika is nothing more than a friend. Maria, however, isn't convinced and teases Alia, suggesting that her newfound attachment to Misachika isn't as platonic as she claims. Alia tries to deny it but admits that Misachika is reliable when it counts. Maria responds by enthusiastically gushing over their budding relationship, much to Alia's dismay. The next day, Misachika arrives at the student council to cover for Yuki. Maria is excited to meet him and introduces herself as Alia's older sister and the council's secretary. Despite her initial professionalism, she playfully insists that Misachika drop the formalities since he's practically family, thanks to his friendship with Alia. As they exchange pleasantries, Maria suddenly experiences a moment of recognition when she hears his first name. She freezes, realizing something but chooses to keep it to herself, apologizing for her sudden pause before continuing the conversation. Later, as Maria and Misachika shop for office supplies, Maria gets distracted by a cute plushie. She suggests buying one for each council member, but Misachika quickly shoots the idea down, humorously pointing out that giving out plushies will cement Kanzaki's status as a lifelong virgin. They compromise on not buying the plushies for the council but decide to grab one for Maria herself. As they walk back, Misachika observes Maria's quirky nature and wonders how Alia manages to deal with such an energetic sister. Their banter continues, with Maria naming the plush after Alia, claiming it symbolizes their bond. At their next stop, Maria gets busy talking to the tea shop owner while Misachika zones out, lost in thought. His mind drifts back to memories of his parents' divorce and the emotional aftermath of choosing to live with his father while Yuki stayed with their mother. Just as he starts to sink deeper into his thoughts, Maria notices his distant expression and brings him back to the present, giving him a comforting hug and patting his hair. The gesture feels strangely familiar to Misachika, momentarily soothing him, until Maria accidentally burns him with hot tea, effectively ruining the moment. Despite the chaos, Misachika can't help but appreciate the strange but supportive bond he's forming with Alia's family.
Subscribe and like for the next part.